The champagne bottle exploded with a deafening pop in the VIP section of Eclipse Lounge, Nairobi's most exclusive nightclub. Grace threw her head back, laughing as golden liquid fountained into the air, drenching her designer dress worth more than most Kenyans earned in 6 months. Her iPhone captured every second for Instagram. "Living my best life," she shouted over the pounding Afro beats, diamonds glittering on her wrists. At that exact moment, 3,000 kilometers away in a small village in western Kenya, Mama Kinyi's trembling hand reached for the cooking pot. Empty. Again. Her fingers, wrinkled and worn from decades of labor, scraped against the dry metal bottom, searching desperately for even a grain of rice, a bean, anything. There was nothing. In Lagos, David stood beside his brand-new white Range Rover, recording a video for his 20,000 followers. "Number 3 in the collection, baby. God is good." He kissed his fingers and pointed them skyward, his gold Rolex catching the Nigerian sun. Mama Kinyi's vision blurred. 3 days without food. Her legs buckled. In Johannesburg, Sharon posed at a Fashion Week after-party. Her new diamond bracelet, a small gift she bought herself, sparkling under studio lights. "When you work hard, you play hard," she captioned the post, champagne glass raised high. The mud floor of the village hut rushed up to meet Mama Kinyi's face. Mama Kinyi. Mama Wanjiku's scream pierced the quiet afternoon as she pushed through the wooden door. The elderly neighbor dropped her basket of vegetables and fell to her knees beside the unconscious woman. Mama Kinyi's lips were cracked and pale, her breathing shallow, her body as light as a child's when Mama Wanjiku cradled her head. On Grace's phone screen, her post was already collecting likes. Hundreds of them. Hearts and fire emojis flooded the comments. Queen. Goals. Living the dream. Mama Wanjiku's tears fell onto Mama Kinyi's sunken cheeks as she called for help, her voice cracking with anguish and rage. Freeze frame on Mama Kinyi's unconscious face, peaceful despite the horror of her condition. Narrator. How did it come to this? How did a mother who gave everything end up with nothing? To understand this tragedy, we must go back to when Mama Kinyi was still fighting, still hoping her children would remember. The rooster's crow seemed weaker than usual that Monday morning, or perhaps it was just Mama Kinyi's hunger making everything sound distant and hollow. She sat up slowly on her thin mattress, every joint protesting the movement. The torn thatched roof above her head let in streams of early morning light, and rain when the storms came. She'd asked David to send money for repairs 6 months ago. He'd read the message but never replied. Mama Akinyi shuffled the corner of her 2-room mud house where she kept her granary. The large clay pot that should have been full of maize was empty except for a few kernels rolling around the bottom. She picked them up one by one, counting them like precious gems. 7 kernels of corn. This was what remained of the woman who had once been the most respected primary school teacher in the district. Mama Grace, Mama David, Mama Sharon. The villagers used to call her with reverence, defining her by her successful children. Now, they whispered different names when they thought she couldn't hear. The abandoned one, that poor woman. Can you believe what those children did? She lowered herself onto the 3-legged stool that David had made in his childhood, back when her children still remembered where they came from. Her fingers traced the rough wood, worn smooth by decades of use. On the cracked wall hung a faded photograph from 2010. Mama Kinyi standing proudly between Grace and David at Grace's university graduation. Sharon knelt in front, her smile brilliant with hope and ambition. Mama Kinyi in the photo wore her best kanga, and her eyes shone with pride and exhaustion. The exhaustion of a widow who had worked 3 jobs to make that moment possible. After her husband died in 2005, thrown from a matatu in a terrible accident on the Nairobi-Kisumu highway, Mama Kinyi had made a vow at his grave. Our children will not suffer. They will finish school. They will have better lives. She kept that promise with a fierceness that bordered on self-destruction. She sold the 2 acres of land her husband had left her, land that would be worth a fortune today, to pay Grace's secondary school fees. She woke at 4 a.m. to bake mandatsi to sell at the market before teaching her class of 50 students. After school, She washed clothes for wealthy families in the trading center until her hands bled. On weekends, she dug in other people's shamba, planting and harvesting for a few shillings that she saved in a tin under her mattress. Every coin went to her children. New shoes when theirs wore out, books, school uniforms, university application fees. When David was accepted to study business in Lagos on a partial scholarship, the remaining fees seemed impossible. The banks wouldn't lend to a village teacher. Her relatives had nothing to give. So Mama Kinney had done the unthinkable. Something she'd never told her children. Something she carried like a secret wound. But that revelation would come later, in a moment that would shatter her children's hearts. Now, she reached for her ancient Nokia phone. Its screen cracked but still functional. She scrolled through her contacts. Grace, David, Sharon. 3 names. 3 children she'd built from nothing into something extraordinary. 3 people who now treated her like a burden. Her thumb hovered over Grace's number. The last time she called, 2 weeks ago, Grace had answered with irritation in her voice. Mama, I'm in a meeting. What is it now? When Mama Kinney had quietly asked if Grace could send something for food, there had been a long sigh. Mama, I just sent you money last month. That was a lie. The last money came 3 months ago. 5,000 shillings that had lasted barely 2 weeks with the cost of food and her blood pressure medication. She tried David next. The call went straight to voicemail. His voicemail was in English now, professional and cold. You've reached David Omondi. Leave a message. She didn't. What was the point? Sharon's number rang and rang. Mama Kinney could picture her youngest daughter, probably sleeping off another late night at some club, her phone buzzing unheard beside bottles of expensive liquor and designer handbags. Sharon had always been the most tender-hearted of her children, the one who used to climb into her lap and say, "When I'm rich, Mama, I'll build you a big house with a TV in every room." Now Sharon sent occasional text messages, "Hi, Mama, so busy, talk soon," followed by radio silence. Mama Kinney set the phone down and looked at the 7 corn kernels in her palm. She could boil them with water to make a thin porridge. It would barely qualify as a meal, but it was something. Or she could save them and hope that by tomorrow, someone, anyone, would remember she existed. The wooden door creaked open, and Mama Wanjiku entered, carrying a small pot covered with a worn cloth. The elderly neighbor took one look at Mama Kinney's face and knew immediately, without a word. She set down the pot and pulled back the cloth, revealing still warm uji, the porridge made from millet and milk. "You haven't eaten," Mama Wanjiku said. It wasn't a question. Mama Kinney's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "I cannot keep taking from you, Mama. You have your own grandchildren to feed. Those grandchildren's mother sends money every week without fail," Mama Wanjiku said sharply. "My daughter may clean toilets in Saudi Arabia, but she remembers her mother. She honors her mother." The unspoken comparison hung in the air like smoke. Mama Kinney accepted the porridge with trembling hands, her pride finally crumbling under the weight of her hunger. As she sipped the warm, life-giving liquid, Mama Wanjiku sat beside her and noticed the phone on the table. The call log showing 3 attempted calls that morning. "They still don't answer?" Mama Wanjiku asked softly. Mama Kinney shook her head, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. Mama Wanjiku pulled out her own smartphone, a gift from her daughter, and opened Facebook. "Mama Kinney," she said carefully, "I think there is something you should see. Or perhaps you shouldn't see it." But Mama Kinney took the phone. There on the glowing screen was Grace's Instagram profile, public for the world to see. The most recent post, from the night before, Grace in a sequin dress at a rooftop restaurant, the Nairobi skyline glittering behind her. The table was covered with plates of lobster, steak, and champagne. The caption read, "Celebrating closing another major deal. Blessed and highly favored. Folded hands, money bag sparkles." Below that, David's Facebook post from 2 days ago, a video tour of his new apartment in Victoria Island, Lagos's most expensive neighborhood. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a swimming pool on the balcony. "God's grace is sufficient," he'd written. The post had 300 likes. And Sharon, Sharon's entire Instagram feed was a glossy magazine of excess. Designer shopping bags from Santon City, champagne brunches, fashion show invitations. Her bio read, "Living my best life sparkles fashion travel luxury." Mama Kinney stared at the screen, at her children's smiling faces surrounded by abundance while she sat in her crumbling house counting corn kernels. The porridge in her stomach suddenly felt heavy as stones. "They haven't forgotten how to use their phones," she whispered. "They've forgotten they have a mother." Mama Wanjika took her phone back, her own face twisted with anger. "This is not right, Mama Kinney. This is not the African way. The ancestors are watching, and they will not be pleased." After Mama Wanjika left, Mama Kinney sat alone in the growing afternoon heat. The porridge had given her some strength, but it couldn't fill the hollow space in her chest where her children's love used to live. She looked again at the old photograph on the wall, at their young, hopeful faces, at her own exhausted but joyful expression. "I gave you everything," she whispered to their frozen smiles. "Everything I had, everything I was." Outside, life in the village continued its slow rhythm. Children's laughter floated through the air. A radio somewhere played Bengal music. Someone was pounding maize in a wooden mortar, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump marking time like a heartbeat. Mama Kinney's phone buzzed. Her heart leaped. Maybe one of them had finally, but no. It was an automated message from her mobile service provider advertising data bundles she couldn't afford. She set the phone down and stared at the empty granary pot, at the torn roof, at the life she'd sacrificed everything to escape for her children. And she wondered, when you give your children the world, what happens when they forget the hands that lifted them up? The answer, she was learning, was silence. A silence so loud it echoed through the empty rooms of her heart. That night, Mama Kinney ate nothing. The porridge from Mama Wanjika was gone, and her pride wouldn't let her ask for more. As she lay on her thin mattress, her stomach cramping with hunger, she didn't know that her children were at that very moment posting new photos. Grace at a wine-tasting event, David at a beach resort, Sharon at an exclusive nightclub. She didn't know that in 3 days, her hunger would drive her body past its breaking point. She didn't know that her collapse would become the spark that would finally force the world to see what her children had become. But the village knew. The neighbors whispered and watched. And one young teacher named Kenneth was about to do something that would change everything. Grace Kinney. She dropped her last name professionally, preferring just Grace on her business cards, stood before the floor-length mirror in her Kilimani apartment, adjusting her Versace sunglasses. The morning sun streamed through windows that overlooked Nairobi's skyline, catching the gold fixtures in her marble bathroom. Her phone buzzed with notifications. 3 new followers on Instagram, a comment from a local celebrity on her latest post, and a text from her personal shopper about a new shipment of handbags from Dubai. She swiped past a missed call notification. "Mama," the screen had said at 6:47 a.m. Grace frowned slightly, then dismissed it. Her mother always called at inconvenient times, always with the same requests. Money for this, money for that. Grace had sent her 5,000 shillings just, when was it? A few months ago? That should have been enough. The old woman probably gave it away to those village parasites who were always at her door with their hands out. "Babe, we're going to be late." Marcus called from the bedroom. Her boyfriend, a partner at a prestigious law firm, was already dressed in his tailored suit, checking his Patek Philippe watch. They had brunch reservations at the Talisman, where a single meal cost more than most Kenyans earned in a week. Grace grabbed her Gucci bag, one of 7 she owned, and her car keys. Her white Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon sat in the underground parking, gleaming and perfect, as they drove through Nairobi's streets. Grace barely noticed the hawkers selling fruit at the roadside, the mothers carrying babies on their backs, the poverty that existed just beyond the tinted windows of her luxury SUV. At brunch, she ordered champagne and lobster Benedict. As Marcus talked about his latest case, Grace scrolled through her phone, posting a photo of her mimosa with the caption, "Sunday brunch goals, clinking glasses sparkles, hashtag blessed life, hashtag Nairobi living, hashtag luxury lifestyle." A friend commented, "Grace, you're glowing. That successful life looks good on you." Grace smiled and typed back, "Hard work pays off. Flexed biceps crown. Hard work. Yes, she worked hard. 60-hour weeks at the bank, managing millions of shillings in loans and investments. But had her mother not worked hard too? Waking at 4 a.m. to bake mandazzi, teaching all day, washing clothes until her hands bled? Grace pushed the thought away. That was different. That was the past. This was her life now, and she'd earned it. Her phone buzzed again. Another missed call from Mama. Grace declined it and turned off her phone. She had 2 more brunches scheduled this month, a spa day on Wednesday, and VIP tickets to a concert at the weekend. She didn't have time for her mother's village drama. 3,000 kilometers west in Lagos, Nigeria, David Omondi was living what he called a dream. His real estate development company had just secured a contract to build a luxury apartment complex in Lekki, and he was celebrating in the way he knew best. Excess. His penthouse in Victoria Island was a temple to his success. Italian leather sofas, a wine collection worth millions of naira, a home cinema, a gym with equipment he never used but liked to show off during house tours. His bedroom closet held 50 pairs of designer shoes, each worth more than his mother's entire house. David stood on his balcony, the Lagos sunset painting the sky orange and purple, and recorded a video for his Instagram story. "Another successful day in paradise," he said to the camera, panning across the infinity pool, the skyline, the champagne bottle chilling in an ice bucket. To everyone grinding out there, keep pushing. Success is waiting. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Mum over the past week. David hadn't called her back. What would they even talk about? She didn't understand his world. She'd ask about church, about settling down, about when he was coming to visit the village. The village. The thought made him shudder. Those dusty roads, those nosy neighbors, that tiny mud house where he'd grown up sharing a room with his sisters. David had worked hard to forget that place, to build a new identity. David Omondi, CEO, his LinkedIn profile proclaimed, with a professional photo taken by a photographer who charged 200,000 naira for a session. His business associates knew nothing about his humble beginnings. He crafted a story of coming from a comfortable middle-class family in Nairobi. The truth, that his mother had sold land, broken her back, sacrificed everything, was edited out of his personal narrative like an unwanted scene in a movie. Tonight, he was hosting a party. 50 guests. Catered food from Lagos's most expensive restaurant. A DJ who charged 500,000 naira for a night. As the guests arrived, entrepreneurs, Instagram influencers, society people, David moved the crowd like a king in his castle. Champagne always in hand, smile always perfect. "David, my guy," someone called out. "This place is sick. You're really living it up." "You know how we do," David replied smoothly, touching his glass to theirs. "Work hard, play harder." His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw another call from Mom. Without hesitation, he declined it and slipped the phone back into his designer jeans. Whatever she wanted could wait. This was his night, his success, his life. The party raged until 4 a.m. Champagne flowed like water. People danced, laughed, took endless selfies and videos. David posted everything to his social media. "Living my best life, grateful for the journey." Folded hands fire 100 points. As the last guest left and the sun began to rise over Lagos, David collapsed into his bed. Too drunk to notice that his mother had called one more time, or that hundreds of kilometers away in a village he tried to forget, she was lying awake, hungry and heartbroken. In Johannesburg, South Africa, Sharon Akinyi, now going by Shar on all her social media handles, was preparing for another glamorous event. At 28, she'd built a successful career as a fashion influencer and brand ambassador. Her Sandton apartment was filled with gifts from luxury brands, designer clothes, expensive perfumes, jewelry worth hundreds of thousands of rand. Sharon's life was a carefully curated Instagram feed. Every outfit, every location, every moment was chosen for maximum visual impact. Her 150,000 followers watched her daily stories, shopping at exclusive boutiques, dining at 5-star restaurants, attending fashion shows in Cape Town and Durban. This evening, she was getting ready for Johannesburg Fashion Week's closing party. Her glam squad, a makeup artist and hairstylist she paid 5,000 Rand for a single event, worked on her transformation while she scrolled through her phone, responded to brand collaboration offers and DM requests for tips on living your best life. A notification popped up, missed call from Mama. Sharon's thumb hovered over it for a moment. A flash of guilt, sharp and unexpected, pierced through her carefully constructed life. When was the last time she'd actually spoken to her mother? Not just a quick text, but a real conversation? Shar, tilt your head this way, her makeup artist instructed, and the moment passed. Sharon let it go, let the guilt dissolve into the excitement of the evening ahead. At the Fashion Week party, Sharon was in her element. She posed for photos with designers, influencers, celebrities. Her dress, a shimmering gold creation worth 50,000 Rand, caught every camera flash. She posted constantly, Instagram stories every 15 minutes, TikTok videos of her dancing, Twitter updates with hashtags about fashion and luxury. Living the dream. Sparkles, she captioned a photo of herself with a champagne flute, the Johannesburg skyline glittering behind her through the venue's glass walls. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. My daughter, please call when you can. I need to talk to you. Sharon read it and felt that guilt again, stronger this time. But then a famous South African musician approached her for a photo, and she pushed her phone into her clutch purse and forgot about it. She'd call her mother tomorrow, or next week, whenever things calmed down. Her mother didn't understand how busy she was, how demanding this lifestyle was. She was building a brand, a business, a future. Her mother should be proud. Later that night, as Sharon posted a video of herself dancing at the after-party, her diamond bracelet, a self-love gift she bought for 80,000 Rand, glinting under the club lights. She didn't think about the woman who'd raised her. She didn't think about the sacrifices that had made her education possible. She didn't think about the mud house with the torn roof or the empty granary or the hands that had worked until they bled. She thought about her follower count, about brand deals, about which exclusive event she'd attend next week. That night, the same night, all three children were living their best lives across 3 different African cities. Grace posted a photo from Eclipse Lounge's VIP section, champagne bottle in hand, diamonds glittering. David uploaded a video of his luxury apartment tour, showing off marble and gold. Sharon shared endless stories from the Fashion Week after party, her designer dress and jewelry on full display. Their mother's name flashed on their phones. Ignored, declined, forgotten. They didn't know that at that exact moment, Mama Akinyi was eating her last meal, 7 kernels of corn boiled in water. They didn't know she was crying herself to sleep, hungry and abandoned. They didn't know that in 2 more days, her body would give out. They didn't know that a reckoning was coming. The internet never forgets. Social media never sleeps. And in the villages of Africa, where community still means something, where elders are still honored, people were watching. People were taking notes. People were getting angry. And one young teacher named Kenneth had seen enough. Kenneth Odieno was only 26 years old, but he'd already seen enough of life to recognize injustice when it stared him in the face. He'd grown up in the same village as Mama Akinyi, remembered her as a standard 4 teacher, the kind, patient woman who'd stayed after school to help him with mathematics when he struggled, who'd paid for his textbooks when his own parents couldn't afford them. Now, he taught at the same primary school where Mama Akinyi had once worked. His salary was modest, barely 35,000 shillings a month, but he sent half of it home to his widowed mother without fail. This was the African way. This was Ubuntu. I am because we are. On Tuesday afternoon, 2 days before Mama Akinyi's collapse, Kenneth stopped by her house to drop off some groceries, rice, beans, cooking oil, tea leaves. Nothing expensive, but bought with love and respect. He found her sitting outside on a worn stool, so thin she looked like a shadow of herself. Teacher Akinyi, he greeted her respectfully. Despite being her former student, he could never call her by her first name. Some habits, some respect, ran too deep. Kenneth, my son, she smiled weakly. You shouldn't have. You work so hard for your money. A teacher's salary goes further when there's gratitude to spend it on, he replied, setting down the bag of groceries. Not like some people who earn millions, but forget where they come from. Mama Akinyi's smile faded. She knew he meant her children. The whole village knew about Grace, David, and Sharon. Their success story had once been the village's pride. Look what our children can achieve. But now it had become the village's shame. They are busy, Mama Kinney said quietly, defending them even now. They have important jobs, important lives. Kenneth bit his tongue. He wanted to say what everyone was thinking. That being busy was no excuse for letting your mother starve. Instead, he pulled out his phone. Teacher, do you know your children are on social media? Social media? Mama Kinney looked confused. Her ancient Nokia couldn't access the internet. Kenneth opened Instagram and showed her Grace's profile. Post after post of luxury, expensive restaurants, designer clothes, champagne bottles, exotic vacations. Then David's Facebook, the mansion, the cars, the parties. Then Sharon's Instagram, an endless stream of fashion shows, shopping sprees, and nightclub celebrations. Mama Kinney stared at the screen, her hands trembling. Kenneth watched her face crumble as the reality hit her. Her children weren't too busy. They weren't struggling. They were living like royalty while she starved. This was posted yesterday. Kenneth said quietly, showing her Grace's photo from Eclipse Lounge. While you were here with no food. A single tear rolled down Mama Kinney's weathered cheek. They have worked hard for their success, she whispered. I should be happy for them. You should be angry. Kenneth couldn't contain himself anymore. Teacher, you sold your land for them. You worked 3 jobs. You sacrificed your health, your comfort, your entire life. And this is how they repay you. After Kenneth left, fury burned in his chest like fire. He walked through the village, his mind racing. At the small trading center, he found Mama Wanjiku and several other neighbors gathered outside the tea kiosk, talking in hushed tones. Kenneth, Mama Wanjiku called him over. You've been to see Mama Kinney? I have, and I've seen what her children are doing on social media while she suffers. The group erupted in angry murmurs. An elderly man named Ziodiembo spoke up. In my day, such children would be cursed by the elders. This is not our way. This shames us all. Talking won't help her, Kenneth said. But maybe the internet will listen. That evening, Kenneth went home and did something that would change everything. He sat down with his laptop and created a video. He used his own phone to film himself speaking directly to the camera, his voice calm but firm. My name is Kenneth Otieno. I'm a primary school teacher here in Western Kenya. I want to tell you about a woman named Mama Kinney. He held up an old photo of her from her teaching days, strong and proud. This woman sacrificed everything, and I mean everything, to educate her 3 children. Kenneth then showed footage he'd taken, with Mama Kinney's permission, of her home. The torn roof, the empty granary, the cracked walls. This is where she lives today. Alone, hungry, forgotten. Then came the devastating contrast. Kenneth's screen recorded Grace's Instagram, David's Facebook, and Sharon's Instagram stories, all their luxury posts from the past month. He placed them side by side with images of their mother's poverty. While their mother counts kernels of corn, they count champagne bottles. While she sits in darkness, they dance in VIP sections. While she wears torn clothes, they wear Versace and Gucci. These are Grace Akinyi, David Omondi, and Sharon Akinyi. They earn millions. They live in luxury in Nairobi, Lagos, and Johannesburg, and they have left their mother to starve. Kenneth's voice cracked with emotion. Is this who we want to be as Africans? Is this the future we're building? Where success means for getting the hands that lifted us up. He posted a video to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, tagging it with hashtags. Hashtag mother abandoned, hashtag African values, hashtag elder abuse, hashtag shame on you, hashtag remember your roots. Then he waited. The video started slowly. A few hundred views in the first hour. Kenneth's friends and family shared it. Then someone in Nairobi with a large following saw it and retweeted it. Then a popular blogger in Lagos picked it up. Then a South African news aggregator featured it. By Wednesday morning, the video had 50,000 views. By Wednesday afternoon, 200,000 views. By Wednesday evening, 1 million views. The internet erupted. Comments flooded in by the thousands. This is disgusting. Those children should be ashamed. I'm crying watching this. That poor mother. Grace, David, Sharon, you are a disgrace to Africa. My mother raised me alone, and I send her money every month without fail. These rich kids make me sick. Kenyan Twitter, the most ruthless corner of the internet, found Grace's Instagram and descended like locusts. Every post, every photo of her luxury lifestyle was bombarded with comments. While your mother starves? Shame. Delete your account, you disgrace. Your designer bags can't hide your rotten heart. Grace woke up Wednesday morning to thousands of notifications. Her phone was blowing up. Confused and annoyed, she opened Instagram to find her beautiful, curated feed under siege. Her latest post, a photo of her new Gucci sunglasses, had 10,000 comments, all of them brutal. Her hands shook as she watched Kenneth's video. Horror and shame washed over her in waves, but something else too. Defensiveness, anger. How dare this village teacher expose her family's business to the world? How dare the internet judge her? They didn't know her side of the story. But deep down, underneath the outrage, Grace knew. She knew she was guilty. In Lagos, David's phone had been buzzing nonstop since midnight. He'd ignored it, assuming it was just the usual social media noise. When he finally checked it Wednesday morning, his blood ran cold. The video had been shared in every Nigerian entrepreneur group, every business network he belonged to. His colleagues, his clients, his competitors, everyone had seen it. His inbox was full of messages. David, is this true about your mother? Bro, you need to address this ASAP. I'm reconsidering our business partnership until this is resolved. One of his biggest investors had sent a curt message. Call me immediately. We need to discuss your character and whether it aligns with our company's values. David watched the video, his face burning with shame and rage. That interfering teacher, that small-minded village fool, this was a private family matter. He wanted to release a statement, to explain, to defend himself, but what could he say? Every luxury post on his social media was evidence against him. His business phone rang. A journalist from one of Nigeria's major newspapers. Mr. Omondi, we like your comment on the viral video about your mother in Kenya. David hung up. His perfect life was crumbling in real time. Sharon was at a breakfast meeting with a major fashion brand when her phone started going crazy. The brand representative across from her noticed her distraction. Everything okay? Sharon smiled nervously and excused herself to the bathroom. She locked herself in a stall and watched Kenneth's video with mounting horror. The contrast between her glittering Instagram and her mother's suffering was devastating, undeniable. Her DMs were flooded with hate messages. Brands she worked with were sending concerned emails. One message made her stomach drop. Hi, Shar. We're going to have to pause our partnership pending resolution of the current controversy. Our brand values family, and we can't be associated with. Sharon felt her carefully built empire collapsing. Her phone rang. Her agent. Sharon, we need to talk. Every single one of your sponsors is asking about this video. This is a PR nightmare. By Thursday morning, the story had gone beyond social media. Major newspapers across Africa picked it up. Kenyan woman starves while children party in luxury. Daily Nation, Kenya. Abandoned mother highlights changing African values. The Guardian, Nigeria. Viral video exposes wealthy siblings who left Mother T.O. suffer. News 24, South Africa. Television stations sent crews to the village. Journalists tracked down Mama Wanjiku, Mzi Odiambo, Kenneth, anyone who knew Mama Kinney. The village that had been forgotten by the three successful children was suddenly the center of African media attention. Mama Kinney, weak from hunger, was overwhelmed when reporters arrived at her doorstep. Please, she begged them, my children are not bad people. They have just forgotten. Please leave them alone. Even in her suffering, she defended them. The reporters, hardened by years of covering corruption and tragedy, were moved to tears by her loyalty. Kenneth gave interviews to anyone who asked, "This isn't about punishing these children. This is about reminding all of us what matters. Success means nothing if we forget where we came from. Money means nothing if we let our parents starve. The video reached 10 million views, then 20 million. It spread beyond Africa to the global African diaspora. In London, New York, Toronto, Paris, anywhere Africans gathered, people were talking about Mama Kinney and her shameful children. Grace, David, and Sharon found themselves isolated in their respective cities. Friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. Grace's colleagues at the bank whispered behind her back. David was uninvited from a major business conference. Sharon's favorite restaurant refused her a reservation. The internet had spoken, and its judgment was unanimous. They had failed in the most fundamental human duty. They had forgotten their mother. On Thursday evening, as the sun set over 3 African cities, 3 phones rang almost simultaneously. Grace in Nairobi, David in Lagos, Sharon in Johannesburg. They'd been avoiding each other, drowning in their individual shame. But now they had to face it together. "We need to go home," Grace said when they were all on the conference call. Her voice was hollow, defeated. "The whole world is watching," David added. "We don't have a choice." Sharon was crying. "I can't believe we let it get this bad. What have we become?" They booked flights for Friday morning. As they packed their designer luggage for the journey back to the village they'd tried so hard to leave behind, none of them slept. They scrolled through the endless condemnation online, each comment a knife in their conscience. "May your money choke you. I hope you can never enjoy another meal knowing your mother is hungry. The ancestors are ashamed of you." And the video kept playing, kept spreading, kept reminding the world of their betrayal. Kenneth's voice, calm and condemning. "Is this who we want to be as Africans?" The answer from millions of voices was a resounding no. Tomorrow, they would face their mother. But tonight, in their luxury apartments, surrounded by all the things they bought with the success she'd made possible, Grace, David, and Sharon understood a terrible truth. They had become people even they couldn't respect. The reckoning was coming, and no amount of money could buy their way out of what they'd done. Friday morning broke with an unusual chill across western Kenya. Mama Kinney had barely slept, her body weak from days of insufficient food. She didn't know that 3 planes were in the air, carrying her children home. She didn't know that dozens of journalists were already setting up cameras around the village, or that her mud house had become the center of the biggest social media story in Africa. She only knew that Mama Wanjiku had brought her porridge again, and that the weight of the world's attention felt heavier than hunger itself. "They're coming," Mama Wanjiku said quietly. "I saw it on Facebook. All 3 of them are on their way." Mama Kinney's hands trembled around her cup. After days of silence, now they came, not out of love, but out of shame. Not because they remembered her, but because the world had forced them to remember. Grace landed at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport at 9 a.m. Usually, she'd have her driver meet her, but this time she'd come alone. She rented a modest car. Her Mercedes would have been obscene today, and began the 4-hour drive to the village. Every kilometer felt like a journey through her own guilt. Her phone still buzzed with notifications. She'd posted nothing since the video went viral. Her publicist had advised silence, but the silence on social media couldn't quiet the noise in her head. Her mother's voice from years ago, saying education is the key to everything, Grace. Promise me you'll use it to help others. When had others stopped including the woman who'd said those words? David's flight from Lagos arrived at noon in Nairobi. He and Grace had coordinated to drive together, though neither had much to say. They sat in the car in loaded silence, the luxury of their lives feeling like accusation rather than achievement. David kept checking his phone, watching his business opportunities evaporate with each passing hour. "We sent money," he finally said, defensive even now. "It's not like we completely abandoned her." Grace turned to him with hollow eyes. "When was the last time you actually sent money, David? I mean, actually, not just what you told yourself to feel better." David's jaw clenched. He couldn't remember. 3 months ago? 4? The truth was too shameful to speak aloud. Sharon's flight from Johannesburg was delayed. She sat in the airport, her designer sunglasses hiding eyes swollen from crying, scrolling to the comments on Kenneth's video. One comment had thousands of likes. "My mother swept floors to send me to university. Now I'm a doctor and she lives in a nice house. I bought her." It's not hard to remember where you came from if you're not trash. The word trash echoed in Sharon's mind. Was that what she'd become? A trash person in designer clothes? By 3 p.m., a crowd had gathered in the village. Not just locals, but journalists from Nairobi, Kisumu, even international news outlets. Cameras lined the path to Mama Kinney's house. Kenneth had tried to keep them at a respectful distance, but the media circus was impossible to control. Nziodiambo and the other village elders sat under the large magumo tree in the center of the homestead, their faces grave. In traditional society, what Grace, David, and Sharon had done was more than neglect. It was a violation of sacred duty, an offense against the ancestors themselves. Those children will have to answer not just to their mother, but to all of us, Nziodiambo declared. They have shamed not just their family, but our entire community. Inside her house, Mama Kinney sat on her three-legged stool, dressed in her cleanest kanga, her head wrapped carefully tied. Mama Wanjiku had helped her bathe and had insisted she eat some ugali and sukuma wiki to give her strength for what was coming. Are you ready for this, Mama? Mama Wanjiku asked gently. Mama Kinney's eyes were distant, seeing into the past. I have been ready since the day I sold my land to pay for Grace's school fees. Since the day I worked until my hands bled. Since the day I... She stopped, the secret she carried for years pressing against her lips. There are things my children don't know, Mama Wanjiku, things they need to hear. Grace and David arrived first, just after 4 p.m. The moment their car entered the village, people began to point and whisper. Some shouted, "Shame on you! Now you remember your mother?" Too late. Children threw small stones at the car, not hard enough to damage, but enough to show contempt. Grace's hands gripped the steering wheel, so hard her knuckles turned white. This was her village, where she'd grown up, where everyone had once known her as that Smartakinney girl. Now they knew her as something else entirely. They parked outside the homestead, and the reality hit them like a physical blow. The house was worse than they remembered, or perhaps they'd simply erased a memory of how bad it was. The torn roof, the cracked mud walls, the complete absence of any comfort or dignity. This was where their mother lived while they slept in penthouses and luxury apartments. The crowd parted to let them through, but the silence was more brutal than any words. Journalists called out questions that they ignored. Cameras flashed. Someone live-streamed their arrival, and within seconds, thousands were watching online. Kenneth stood at the doorway, his expression unreadable. She's inside. Alone. She wanted to see you without an audience. Grace and David exchanged glances, then stepped through the low doorway. They had to duck. Both had grown tall and successful, too big now for their mother's small world. Mama Kinney sat in the dimness, backlit by the afternoon sun streaming through gaps in the roof. She looked so small, so frail. Grace's breath caught in her throat. When had her mother become so old, so thin? The vital, strong woman who'd raised him had been replaced by this fragile shadow. Mama, Grace's voice broke. She fell to her knees in the traditional way, David beside her. Mama, we're so sorry. Mama Kinney looked at them for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, her voice soft but steady. Why are you here, my children? The question hung in the air like smoke. David opened his mouth to answer, but Mama Kinney raised her hand. Let me answer for you. You are here because the world forced you to come, because your reputations are in danger, because people are watching. Her voice remained calm, which somehow made her words cut deeper. You are not here because you woke up one morning and thought, I wonder how my mother is doing. You are not here because you heard my hunger in your hearts. Mama, that's not. Grace tried to speak, but her mother's gaze silenced her. Do not lie to me now, my daughter. I have lived with your lies for months. I'll send money next week. Mama, I'm just busy, Mama. I'll visit soon, Mama. Lies that felt kinder than silence, but were just another form of abandonment. Sharon arrived then, bursting through the doorway, her expensive luggage abandoned outside. Her makeup was ruined by tears, her designer clothes dusty from the village road. Mama, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. She collapsed beside her siblings, the three of them kneeling before their mother like children again. Mama Kinney looked at all three of her children, her life's work, her sacrifices made flesh, and something in her ancient heart finally cracked open. "Do you know what I did for you?" she asked quietly. "Do you really know?" "You worked hard," Grace whispered. "You sacrificed everything." "No." Mama Kinney shook her head. "You know the story I told you. You don't know the truth." She stood slowly, her joints protesting, and moved to a small wooden box hidden beneath her mattress. From it, she pulled out a faded medical document, yellowed with age. Her hands shook as she held it. "When your Baba died, we had nothing. The little money from his job ended. I had no family to help. They'd all opposed our marriage. I was alone with 3 children to educate. Grace, you were in Form 4. University was coming. David, your secondary school fees were due. Sharon, you needed books, uniforms, everything." She paused, her breath ragged with emotion. "I worked 3 jobs, but it wasn't enough. No one would give me a loan. I was just a village teacher, a widow with no collateral. Then someone told me about a hospital in Nairobi where desperate people could sell." Her voice broke. "Where they could sell their organs." The silence in the room became absolute. Outside, the world continued, journalists chattering, cameras clicking. But inside that small mud house, time seemed to stop. "Mama, no," Sharon whispered, her face draining of color. Mama Kinney lifted her kanga, revealing her side. There, beneath the wrinkled skin, was a long surgical scar, faded but unmistakable. "I sold my kidney," she said simply. "In 2008. They paid me 400,000 shillings. That money paid for Grace's first year of university, David's school fees, and Sharon's everything for 2 years." Grace made a sound like a wounded animal. David's face crumpled. Sharon simply shook, her whole body convulsing with sobs. "You sold your kidney?" Grace's voice was barely audible. "You sold a part of your body for us?" "What is a kidney compared to my children's future?" Mama Kinney said. "What is any sacrifice compared to a mother's love? I would have sold both kidneys if they'd let me. I would have sold my heart if it meant you could succeed." She moved closer to them, her shadow falling across their bowed heads. "But here is what breaks me, my children. Not that I sacrificed. I would do it again tomorrow. What breaks me is that you took all that sacrifice, all that love, all that pain, and you turned it into champagne and designer clothes. You turned my kidney into your Mercedes-Benz, Grace. You turned my blood into your mansion, David. You turned my suffering into your Instagram posts, Sharon." The accusations fell like hammer blows. Each child was weeping now, their expensive clothes soaked with tears and village dust. "We didn't know," David choked out. "Mama, we didn't know about the kidney. Would it have mattered?" Mama Kinney asked, "Would knowing have changed the fact that you ignored my calls? That you let me go hungry? That you posted pictures of your luxury while I counted kernels of corn?" She lowered herself back onto her stool, suddenly exhausted. "I am not angry that you succeeded, my children. I am heartbroken that your success made you forget you are human, that you have a mother, that you come from somewhere." Outside, Sharon's phone buzzed with a notification. In the cruelest of ironies, it was an Instagram alert. One of her old posts had been shared with the caption, "This is what a kidney looks like when you turn it into a designer handbag." The 3 children sat in the dust of their childhood home, their tears mixing with the red earth of their mother's floor. All their success, all their achievements, all their carefully curated lives felt suddenly worthless. What had they become? "Mama," Grace finally spoke, her voice raw. "How do we fix this? Tell us how to fix this." Mama Kinney looked at her eldest daughter with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "You cannot fix it, Grace. You cannot give me back the years you stole. You cannot undo the hunger, the loneliness, the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if my children had become strangers. Then what do we do?" David asked, desperate. "Please, Mama, tell us what to do. You become different people." Mama Kinney said firmly, "Not today, not because the world is watching, but every day from now on. You remember that money without character is just noise. That success without gratitude is just empty achievement. That luxury without love is just another form of poverty. She reached out and touched each of their faces, her calloused hands gentle despite everything. I forgive you, my children, because I am your mother, and that is what mothers do. But you must learn to forgive yourselves by becoming worthy of forgiveness. The journalists outside were getting restless. Kenneth knocked gently on the doorframe. Mama Kinyi, they want a statement. From you, from the children. The whole world is watching. Mama Kinyi nodded slowly. Then let the world watch. Let them see what happens when children remember who they are. They emerged from the house into the harsh glare of cameras and judgment. The three successful children, humbled and broken, stood beside their mother. Grace supported Mama Kinyi on one side, Sharon on the other. David stood behind them, his head bowed. Kenneth held up a hand for silence. Mama Kinyi has agreed to make a statement. The crowd pressed closer. Phones recorded. This moment will be shared millions of times before sunset. Mama Kinyi's voice was weak but clear. I want to thank the young teacher, Kenneth, and all of you who spoke up for me. But I want to say this. My children are not monsters. They are human beings who forgot. We all forget sometimes. The question is, what do we do when we remember? She turned to look at Grace, David, and Sharon. These are my children. I gave them life. I gave them education. I gave them everything I had, including parts of my body they didn't even know about. And yes, they forgot me. They hurt me. They nearly let me die. The crowd murmured angrily, but Mama Kinyi raised her hand. But they are here now. And if there is one thing I want the world to learn from this, it is not just to shame those who forget, but to celebrate those who remember, to give people a chance to become better. Grace stepped forward, her voice shaking. I have no excuse for what I did. None of us do. We took our mother's sacrifices, and we turned them into selfishness. We earned money and lost our souls. But we promise, that starting today, we will spend the rest of our lives trying to become the children our mother deserved. David added, we're going to fix our mother's house. We're going to make sure she never goes hungry again. But more than that, we're going to set up a foundation to help other elderly parents who have been abandoned by their children. We're going to turn our shame into something meaningful. Sharon, tears streaming down her face, said, I posted my life online for strangers to see, but I couldn't make time for my own mother. I'm deleting my Instagram. I'm changing my life. Because no amount of followers can replace the woman who gave me everything. The crowd's anger began to shift. This was what people wanted to see. Not just punishment, but transformation. Not just shame, but redemption. Nziodiambo stood from under the Magumo tree. As the eldest in the community, his words carried weight. We have witnessed a great wrong, but we have also witnessed the first steps toward making it right. The ancestors are watching. They will judge not by words today, but by actions tomorrow and all the days after. That evening, as the journalists packed up and the crowd dispersed, the three children sat with their mother and began the real work, not the performative gestures for cameras, but the quiet, difficult work of rebuilding trust. They measured the roof, calculated costs for repairs. They made lists of what their mother needed. But more importantly, they sat with her and listened as she told them stories they'd been too busy to hear before. Stories of their father, of their childhood, of the village they tried to forget. Grace called her bank and arranged an immediate transfer. Not the pittance she'd occasionally sent before, but real money, substantial money. Every month, Mama. More than you'll ever need. It's the least we can do. David contacted his business partner in Lagos. I need you to help me set up a foundation. The Mama Kinyi Foundation for Elderly Care. I'm committing $1 million to start. Sharon drafted a post. Not for Instagram this time, but for a blog she was creating. How I lost myself in success and found my way home. She would use her platform not for luxury, but for purpose. But none of this happened in a day. The cameras captured the promises, but what happened next would take months, years, a lifetime to fulfill. 6 months had passed since the viral video that shook Africa. The story of Mama Kinyi and her 3 children had faded from the daily news cycle, replaced by new scandals, new dramas, new viral moments. But in the small village in western Kenya, real change was happening. The kind that doesn't make headlines but transforms lives. Mama Akinyi's house was unrecognizable. The torn thatched roof had been replaced with sturdy iron sheets that didn't leak when the rains came. The mud walls had been reinforced and painted a cheerful yellow. Solar panels on the roof powered lights and a small refrigerator. Luxuries Mama Akinyi had never imagined owning. A water tank collected rainwater, saving her the long walk to the borehole. But the biggest change wasn't the house. It was in the people inside it. Grace had taken a leave of absence from her high-pressure banking job and spent 3 months in the village, reconnecting with her mother and herself. She'd sold her Mercedes, moved to a modest apartment, and learned to live with less. Now she visited every weekend without fail, sitting with her mother to shell beans or just talk about life. "Mama, do you remember when I was 7 and I said I wanted to be a teacher like you?" Grace asked one Saturday morning as they prepared breakfast together. Mama Akinyi smiled. "You change your mind when you learn teachers don't make much money. I was a foolish child, and I became a foolish adult." Grace stirred the porridge slowly. "But I'm applying to teach business classes at the village secondary school. Part-time. I want to teach young people about success that doesn't cost them their souls." Mama Akinyi's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of pride, not pain. David had kept his promise about the foundation. The Mama Akinyi Foundation for Elderly Care now operated in Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. It provided monthly stipends to abandoned elderly parents, funded home repairs, paid for medical care, and, most importantly, ran programs to reconnect estranged families. He'd hired Kenneth as the foundation's director in Kenya, recognizing that the young teacher understood the problem better than any consultant ever could. Together, they'd helped over 500 elderly parents in the first 6 months. David himself had changed. He still ran his real estate business, but he'd sold 2 of his cars, downsized his apartment, and began living more modestly. Every month, he flew to Kenya not for business, but to spend time with his mother. They'd talk for hours, conversations they'd never had before. "You know what I regret most?" David told his mother one evening as they sat outside watching the sunset. "Not the money I wasted, but the time. I can make more money, Mama, but I can never get back the years I ignored you." Mama Akinyi took his hand. "You are here now, my son. That is what matters. The past is gone. We have today." Sharon had been true to her word. She deleted her Instagram account at its peak, walking away from 150,000 followers and lucrative brand deals. The decision had shocked the influencer world, but Sharon had found something more valuable than likes and followers: purpose. She'd moved back to Kenya and started a social enterprise that trained young women in fashion design and business skills. But unlike her previous life of excess, this was fashion with meaning, creating employment, preserving traditional African textiles, empowering communities. She lived in a small house next to her mother's renovated home. Every morning, she woke up to the sound of roosters and the smell of her mother's morning tea. She'd traded designer dresses for simple kaiten wraps, nightclubs for community meetings, champagne for chai. "Are you happy?" a journalist had asked her during a follow-up interview. Sharon had smiled, a genuine smile, unlike the performative ones from her Instagram days. "I'm not just happy. I'm whole. For the first time in my adult life, I'm whole." On a warm November afternoon, the village gathered for a special ceremony. The Mama Akinyi Foundation was launching its community center, a place where elderly people could gather, where young people could learn traditional skills, where families could reconnect. Mama Akinyi, now healthier and stronger, stood before the crowd. She wore a new kanga, a gift from her children, but her dignity came not from the fabric, but from the transformation she'd witnessed. 6 months ago, she began, her voice steady and clear, I was dying, not just from hunger, but from heartbreak. My children had forgotten me, and I had almost given up hope. The crowd listened in respectful silence. Many had their own stories of family estrangement, of children who'd moved to cities and forgotten their roots. But something happened. A young teacher named Kenneth reminded my children, and reminded all of us, that success means nothing if we lose our humanity, that we can have all the money in the world and still be poor in the things that matter. She looked at Grace, David, and Sharon, who stood together near the front of the crowd. My children came back, not just to the village, but to themselves. They remembered who they were, where they came from, and what really matters. Mama Akinyi paused, emotion catching in her throat. But I want to say something important. This story is not just about children who forgot. It's about a system that taught them to forget. It's about cities that pull our young people away and fill their heads with ideas that money equals worth, that luxury equals success, that forgetting your past equals progress. The crowd murmured in agreement. This was a truth they all understood. So today, as we open the center, I want to dedicate it not just to elderly parents, but to young people, to teach them that you can be successful and remember your roots, that you can make money and keep your values, that you can live in the city and honor the village. She beckoned Kenneth forward. This young man could have stayed silent. He could have ignored an old woman's suffering like so many others did, but he spoke up. He reminded us all of Ubuntu. I am because we are. Kenneth accepted the recognition humbly. I only did what any person with a conscience should do. The real heroes are Mama Akinyi, who never gave up hope, and her children, who had the courage to change. Grace stepped forward to speak. 6 months ago, I was rich in money but bankrupt in character. I had everything and nothing. Today, I'm learning to live differently. It's not easy. Every day, I'm tempted to go back to the comfortable lies, the convenient excuses. But then I look at my mother and I remember she sold her kidney for me. The least I can do is give her my time, my attention, my love. She turned to face the crowd, many of whom had judged her harshly 6 months ago. If you're watching this and you've been making the same mistakes I did, if you've been ignoring your parents, if you've been too busy for the people who sacrificed for you, don't wait for a viral video to wake you up. Call them today. Visit them tomorrow. Don't let shame be your only motivation for change. David added his voice. The foundation we started has shown us that this problem is everywhere. In every African city, there are successful children and suffering parents. We're not special in our failure, but we're committed to being intentional in our redemption. This center is just the beginning. Sharon spoke last, her voice soft but firm. I used to measure my worth in followers, likes, and brand deals. I thought that was success. But real success is seeing my mother smile because she knows she's loved. Real wealth is sitting with her in the evening, listening to her stories, learning the wisdom I was too proud to value before. As the ceremony concluded and people mingled, eating food prepared by the village women and celebrating this new beginning, Kenneth pulled Mama Akinyi aside. "Teacher, can I ask you something?" he said quietly. "Of course, my son. Do you truly forgive them? After everything, can you really forgive?" Mama Akinyi looked across the yard where her 3 children were serving food to the elderly people who'd gathered, laughing and talking with villagers they'd once considered beneath them. Grace was helping an old woman to a chair. David was playing with village children. Sharon was teaching young girls a traditional dance she'd almost forgotten. Forgiveness is not forgetting, Kenneth. I will always remember the hunger, the loneliness, the pain, but I choose to also remember this. That people can change. That redemption is possible. That love, real love, is strong enough to survive even the worst betrayals. She smiled, and it was genuine. My children are not perfect. They still make mistakes. Grace sometimes falls back into her workaholic habits. David still checks his business accounts too often. Sharon sometimes misses the glamour of her old life. But they show up. They try. They love me not because the cameras are watching, but because they've remembered how. Kenneth nodded, understanding. You've taught them well, teacher. Not just with your suffering, but with your grace. Grace. Mama Akinyi repeated thoughtfully. Yes, that is a lesson. Not just for my children, but for all of us. We all fall. We all forget. We all fail the people we love. The question is, do we have the grace to forgive and the courage to change? As evening fell and the celebration wound down, Mama Akinyi sat under a magumo tree with her 3 children beside her. The village had quieted. Stars appeared in the darkening sky. In the distance, a radio played Bengal music, and children's laughter echoed through the homesteads. "Mama," Sharon said softly, "what you did, sell your kidney. We can never repay that. You repay it by living well." "Mama," Kinney replied, "not living in luxury, but living with purpose, living with kindness, living with memory of who you are and where you came from." "We're trying," Grace said. "Every day we're trying." "That is all any parent can ask," Mama Kinney said. "Not perfection, but effort. Not success without mistakes, but learning from those mistakes." David looked at his siblings, then at his mother. "Do you think people will remember us for our failure or our redemption?" Mama Kinney considered this. "Both. And that is okay. Let people remember the whole story, the fall and the rise. Because that is the story that might save someone else's family. That is the story that might remind another successful child to call their mother. That is the story that might prevent another old woman from going hungry while her children dance in luxury clubs." The truth of her words settled over them like the evening dew. Their story wasn't a fairy tale with a simple ending. It was messy, complicated, painful, and ongoing, but it was real, and in its reality, there was hope for others. 6 months later, the Mama Kinney Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Offices in 12 African cities. Over 5,000 elderly parents helped. Dozens of families reconnected. A viral movement of young people posting videos of their parents with the hashtag Remember Your Roots had spread across the continent. Grace had published a book, The Price of Success, How I Almost Lost My Mother to Find Myself. Every shilling of profit went to the foundation. David had started a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs, teaching them not just about business, but about balancing success with values. Sharon's social enterprise now employed 200 women and had become profitable while maintaining its social mission. But the most important change wasn't in programs or initiatives. It was in the daily choices. Grace's monthly visits. David's video calls every Sunday. Sharon's morning tea with her mother before heading to work. It was in the way they'd learned to say, "I love you," regularly, not just on special occasions. In the way they'd learned to ask, "How are you feeling?" and actually wait for the honest answer. In the way they'd learned that success without connection is just another form of failure.